So hello, welcome to Awards Academy. Welcome to today's live session. I am Rachel and I'm going to be your host. I'm the Community Manager at Awards Academy. And so Awards Academy is an online platform. It's interactive learning for designers and developers. We've got workshops, mini courses, live sessions, live jury website reviews. So loads of interesting content there for you. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining on YouTube. Remember to like this video and also subscribe to our channel and share it with all your friends. So let's get to today's live. I am joined by Julianna Murphy and Mrinali Kamath. Hello.
Hi Rachel, how's it going?
So Julianna Murphy is UX design lead at IBM Quantum, and Mrinali Kamath is UX designer at Amazon's Device UX Lab. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome, happy to be here.
Thank you for having us. We're really happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. People on YouTube from all over the world: Delhi, New Jersey, London, Canada, Italy. So hoping for loads of questions. So thanks so much for Awards for joining us today. We're really looking forward to what we're going to learn from this live session. And remember everyone, there's a PDF that you can download from the comments. It's a cheat sheet which will give you some more information about today's session. So I'll leave you to it and I'll join you at the very end for the Q&A.
Bye Rachel, thanks.
Okay, have a good one.
Bye. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Designing for Tech You Don't Get, brought to you by the Awards Academy. We're so glad you're here. I'm Mrinali, and preparing this talk has helped me grow, led me to rethink my career goals, and got me to the job I hold today. I'm a UX designer, an ex-IBMer, working at Amazon's UX Lab. We combine research, design, and prototyping to show business and technology partners how customers might experience a given service or a product 2 to 5 years out in the future. We also create vision videos to help align the organization and drive innovation towards a preferred future.
And then, hi, as Rachel mentioned, my name is Julianna Murphy. I'm the UX design lead for the IBM Quantum team, and I'm a design professor at UT Austin. I'm responsible for ensuring that IBM Quantum provides a quality user experience for those learning quantum computing, researching it, and developing real-world applications on our products and services. Now, Mrinali and I both love working in the fast-paced world of emerging tech, but let's face it, there's a lot we both don't fully understand about the domains we work in. We would be lying if we said we did. Working in these spaces can be pretty intimidating sometimes, but trust us, the struggle is worth the reward. That being said, there are a lot of things we've had to learn the hard way that we wish someone had told us a lot earlier, which is why in this talk, we want to share with you how to quickly overcome knowledge gaps. We're going to share some strategies with you to help you collaborate more successfully with highly technical individuals. And we're going to help you design for tech you don't fully understand and a future you can't predict. But first, let's start by laying some ground rules, namely, what is emerging tech? Emerging tech covers any software, hardware, and services that are still in the nascent stage of development, stuck in a research lab somewhere, or just starting to get a foothold in the market. Today's emerging tech includes things you guys already know, like quantum computing, AI, advanced robotics, AR, VR, etc. And in most cases, researchers and strategists haven't even really figured out yet what the main impact of that tech will be, how to make money on it, or how to mass produce it to drive widespread adoption. Without those plans in place, organizations are likely to take a lot of trips back to the drawing board as they face intense pressure from competitors. As such, design in these areas is not for the faint of heart. It's good for designers who are comfortable with ambiguity, uncertainty, and who have the ability to pivot really quickly. But just because you're working in the emerging tech domain doesn't necessarily mean you're working on anything novel. which is exactly kind of what we're going to be honing in on today. To help keep that distinction clear, we're going to refer to these areas as unique spaces, a term coined by partner and lead creative technologist at Argo Design, Jared Ficklin. You'll know you're in one of these spaces when you can't find any examples out in the ether to pull inspiration from. You and your stakeholders lack a clear vision of what the intended outcomes are going to be. And you know that whatever you come up with is going to involve a lot of education to help get your users to a new mode of interaction. And due to all of this uncertainty, boy, do these spaces need designers' help. Designers can do things like help drive adoption, keep the team aligned, make sure that whatever technology path the company's following is focused on users and is ethically driven. And they can help evaluate potential issues early so that they don't become a problem later on. But it doesn't stop there. The opportunities for the individual designer can also be fantastic. So designers often get the chance to have a large impact on a team. They're working in small teams in kind of a really fast pace. They're likely not to be working on one project for more than a couple weeks or months. So it can be a really great way to enrich and grow your skills as a designer. So with all these positive benefits and also the fact that, you know, designing for unique spaces is super cool, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, to be honest, it's because it's really hard.
And we know firsthand that these are challenging spaces to be in. And we weren't the only ones. So we talked to 16 people who range from designers to developers and product managers. And we ensured diversity in roles, backgrounds, and experiences by picking people from very junior to very senior levels. And the story I'm about to tell you is as much theirs as it is ours. So congratulations, you've got a new job in quantum computing. You've always been inquisitive about the technology and are excited to be playing a role in its development when it's still in its early stages. Of course, you know very little about it, and the last time you studied physics was in high school, but you're up for a challenge. So your first day rolls around and you meet the team. You knew the design team was small, but whoa, the dev and research teams are really big. And wait a minute, you are reporting to an engineer? How does this work? You have just a week to get onboarded, and your team seems so busy, you decide not to bother them too much. I got this, you say to yourself. So you dive in headfirst. What is quantum computing? How do quantum computers work? Do I even understand how real computers work? You think to yourself. These questions take you down a rabbit hole. You start seeing math symbols everywhere and think, damn, should I have paid attention to my math teacher? The more you go through things, the more you know what you don't know. And just as you think you might be getting a handle on some of it, suddenly it's Friday and you are already getting added to meetings. And you never even got the chance to dig into your own product. Ready or not, you've got to start working. You struggle to find good design examples because your team is stressing on scientific accuracy over visual styling or ease of use. Of course, they think the users are more like them than they are like you. Plus, it's so new that Muesli, Behance, Tribble suddenly feel like barren wastelands. Anything you find is complex and overwhelming and looks like it's from the 90s. You are smart and creative and capable, but doing even the most basic thing is taking 2 to 3 times as long. And this is time you simply do not have because your team is moving fast and nobody has the time to create multiple iterations. So you only have one chance at creating things and putting it in front of the team before it is time to move on. You fight for user testing, but only get improved for the internal kind. As you fall behind your tasks and your team loses patience, they start putting things together themselves. You start noticing that the team is overpromising and what the technology can do. It feels dishonest, so you bring it up with your boss, and he explains why a fake worm can still catch fish. Other issues pop up, and you're met with similar resistance. As time passes, you stop looking for ethical problems and just start trusting your team more and more. And when it finally comes to share your work, because you can't talk the talk, your stuff gets torn apart. Not from a user perspective, but a technical one. Your lack of technical knowledge starts to show, and the team trusts you at the beginning, but that trust gets weaker and weaker. You begin to compromise and break down known design patterns in an effort to keep your job. Over time, it becomes clear that your team doesn't value design. You were brought in just to pretty things up before they go out the door. You find yourself being boxed in. Your role is defined for you instead of by you. People just don't see you as the innovator you really are. You have only been on the team for 9 months, but you already feel too burnt out and unappreciated to go on. That was rough. That sounds really rough. But it doesn't have to be that way. The same people who shared their struggles with us also helped us come up with a list of strategies to help us combat these difficulties. We've divided them into 4 phases, and without further ado, let's dive into number 1.
All right, first up, getting onboarded. So early on in our research, we realized that when it comes to feeling outnumbered, we weren't alone. Even though big tech companies have doubled or even tripled their hiring goals for design in recent years, research and development teams are still often significantly bigger than design teams. Now, a lot of that has to do with the size and scale of the products being brought to market, as you can kind of see with the ratios above. But some of it has a lot to do with the misconception that designers are only helpful once things are ready for the market. So, odds are you'll be working with more technical people than designers on a daily basis. And it's important that you take the time to meet each one of them individually, because not only are these folks going to be your stakeholders, they're often going to be stand-ins for your users, and you want them to be your advocates as well. So do your due diligence and look them up on LinkedIn before you meet, and then set up some time to chat. Ask them about their hopes and fears with regards to the project. Try to uncover their secret motivations and ask them to define what success means for the project. Doing so will not only help you build camaraderie with your teammates, but will also help you navigate political situations more easily. Carried over from academia, hierarchy is very important on many research and technical teams, and often very confusing for designers. So try using this RACI chart to break down your stakeholders into how do I engage with this person buckets. And while interviewing your team, you should be on the lookout constantly for teachers and allies in the group. These are going to be individuals that have the incredible ability to explain complex concepts in a simple way, while also not talking down to you like you're 6 years old. They're particularly useful for decoding tribal knowledge that's specific to your company, your team, and that you're never going to find on Google. And trust me, even though it can be intimidating to talk to researchers and developers, odds are there's always somebody on your team who's willing to help explain things. Like my go-to teacher, Andrew Wack, who's a distinguished engineer on IBM Quantum, who, over the years has spent hours of time with me, but on this particular instance, spent almost 4 hours over 2 days taking me through the entire quantum computing stack. Also, as you're getting started, make sure to buy yourself as much time for learning as you possibly can. I know this isn't easy because, as a new person, you want to rush ahead and start trying to prove your value. But trust me, your time will come. You'll be buried in work. If you can't, do this on your own, ask your manager to help protect your time. Say no to meetings that you think will turn into asks, and say yes to meetings where you can just listen in. And of course, there's going to be a ton of links and courses and videos and everything thrown at you, and it can become really easy to become overwhelmed. So Try your best to scope your learning to exactly what's needed for the task at hand. Bookmark and close the tabs you don't think are absolutely necessary, and maintain digital hygiene. Marie Kondo your web browser. And wherever possible, make it easy on yourself by trying to learn from various sources and filter learning to the stuff that matches your particular learning style. My first foray into quantum computing, I realized that because I'm a visual learner, I just went on Amazon Prime, typed in the keyword quantum, and then watched every video that I could on the topic. But also remember to digest some internal sources as well. So try sampling some user research recording, testings data, and also regular meeting recordings. And when it comes time to start doing work, jumping straight to wires won't do you any favors. Try starting small and build on your learning using design exercises that follow Bloom's taxonomy, which is the diagram you see here, and a model used by educators to help structure curriculum to help maximize the internalization and absorption of concepts. To do this, try classifying some of your design objectives into levels of mental complexity. Start with the easiest thing, memorizing terms and internal jargon, and only when you're comfortable, play them back to your team. Next, try your best to apply that learning to something basic, like a user journey map that you can go and validate with users. Then, once you understand a few workflows, try analyzing them with a heuristic analysis exercise, or offer to help out with your research team when they're doing fielding and synthesizing of feedback. Trust me, your design work later on will be much more successful if you make sure to get the basics down pat first. Only when you feel truly confident creating wireframes and prototypes should you really, kind of jump fully in. And remember, evaluating and creating are the hardest things to do, so cut yourself some slack. And it isn't all about just what you have to learn. Your onboarding process can provide your team with a rare opportunity to learn how new users react to your product, where they get stuck, and where they excel. So use your fresh eyes for good. You will only have them once. Go through your product or experience and mark out what's nice, what's surprising, what's weird, and what's confusing. Present your findings back to the team. Just remember to do that with humility, because odds are a lot of work and sweat has gone into the stuff that's already there today.
We are moving faster through the development process now more than ever before. Technology and competition are key driving forces for this. And while this means we as designers are saving time with improved tools, it often also means we're moving too fast to understand our why. Stopping and making sure you know what you're working on and why it matters is as important as moving fast. Without this, you end up with a product no one asked for and no one really needs. If you look at this diagram by Simon Sinek, you'll see the outermost layer is the what, then the how and the why. Every single organization on this planet knows what they're working on. Some know how they're going to get there, but very few know why they do what they do. The why stands for your purpose and your belief. Why does your product exist? Why does your organization exist? Why does anyone even care? When we go from the what to the why, people understand what we do, its features, but they don't necessarily buy into it. And when we go from why to the what, we directly speak to the parts of the human brain that drive behavior. If it's not given to you directly, keep challenging your team to figure it out. And when you do find out why you are building that product, make sure the features and functionality of the product actually map to it. Once established, you can keep using the why to inform your decision and increase your credibility. And because words are hard, sketches and diagrams are your best friend, especially the deeper you dive into a unique space. We've seen that people react better to diagrams and mental models than blocks of text or rambling. So use a whiteboard, talk to your team, take them through a mental model, and invite them to edit and redraw. Do what it takes to make sure you have access to real-time collaboration tools. At IBM, we used Figma, InVision, and Mural. You can use whatever fits your needs. Use these tools to check in often and asynchronously and encourage your team members to drop in and look at the work you're doing so that they can fill in the knowledge gaps and flag anything that's not in line with the technical or business side. That way, precious meeting time is saved for things you actually need to discuss. This is especially important for if you're working on things on Monday and it could be totally flipped on its head by Friday. For designers, get over the need to make things perfect. You'd rather show work in progress and get feedback early than get your work torn apart later.
Okay, so up until this point, we've covered things that are largely good practice regardless of what space you work in. But now we're going to get into the really meaty bits. It's paramount that organizations on the front lines of technology not only focus on pushing the limits of the tech itself, but that they also start to imagine what the future applications of this technology will be on the people that interact with them, the world they inhabit, and the societies that foster them. But how are you, a mere designer, supposed to invent a future that doesn't exist yet? And more importantly, before anyone else? This can be especially hard when the uniqueness of your space means that there's lack of convention and inspiration to pull from. To help with this, start following tech trends closely, get a Wired subscription, get a Popular Science subscription, and consider signing up for newsletters. World events can also trigger the accelerated growth of a technology, so keep an eye out for disruptive events that grow the need for a particular tech, like, say, the COVID pandemic is doing to touch and gesture controls. Why touch a potentially hazardous surface when you could just wave your hand over it? And that's the really cool and curious thing about emerging tech, is that it's often that the most innovation occurs due to unexpected outside sources or events, or as other technologies adapt and converge alongside them. Mimicking and learning from nature's toolbox, also known as biomimicry, is another great way to get inspiration, and examples can be found wherever you look. Take, for instance, the Japanese bullet train. When it was first released, naturalists and locals complained a lot about the constant booming that the train caused whenever it entered a tunnel. What was actually happening was that the flattened head of the train was facing so much air resistance that it was basically creating a bullet of air ahead of the train. Engineers were struggling to find the ideal shape, but then ended up finding it in the beak shape of the humble kingfisher. They're the Olympic divers of the natural world, and their beak and head shapes limit almost all disturbance as they dive into the water to catch fish. Shaping the front of the train like the beak of a kingfisher helped reduce the booming sound almost entirely. Working in these unique spaces, you're going to also have to make special affordances for user testing. First, due to the squeamish nature of R&D departments, many organizations are terrified that just confidentiality forms aren't enough to protect their babies. Getting users from outside the organization may be impossible. So try to look for the next best thing. Tap your stakeholders for regular feedback, but also grab people from outside of your team who share some of the same skills and roles as the users you're designing for, and pull them in to create your own internal sponsor team. Also, it's super important to start testing as early as possible when creating new concepts. You don't need a working prototype to start testing user flows. This is important because frequent testing will reduce the amount of false starts, pivots, and wasted dev time down the road. Also, you have to remember that because you're working on something so new and often a new paradigm for how users will work, people are going to be naturally a little confused the first time they see something, regardless of how well you design it. The true test is whether or not these people are still confused after 30 minutes, a day, a week, etc. So let users play around before judging the true effectiveness of your designs. One great way to do this is with a diary study where users log their interactions over an extended period of time. Of course, keep in mind this should be coupled with other user research techniques to get a full picture of how well things are going. And now, while designing and project planning for the next year is tough enough by itself, it's critically important that you stop your team from time to time and get them to start thinking about what 5 to 10 years down the road is going to look like. Why? Because, in my case, some technologies like quantum aren't expected to radically change the world until then. And because setting a long-term project strategy is going to be the key to helping your team beat the competition, reduce time wasted on chasing red herrings, and to prevent the technology from progressing solely based on the will of the market, which often leads to unnecessary waste. To help make this easier and to ensure you stay user-focused, try following some of these tenets of the speculative design practice. And as you can see from the futures cone on the screen, it's not just about predicting the future, it's about imagining multiple possible futures and how technologies will impact the individuals, environment, and society of each. Then from that wide view, it's about identifying the ideal, probable, and preferable ones and figuring out only then, how do you get there? The more futures you ideate and think up, the more likely that some are to stick. One way to help you more accurately predict the future in these exercises is to make sure you stay focused on people. This is because while technology moves incredibly fast, individual behavior and motivations change much slower. Our core principles of safety, security, and family and society have changed very little in thousands of years and aren't likely to do so anytime soon. So, want to run your own speculative design workshop on your team? There are a bunch of great toolkits out there. One of my personal favorites is this Actionable Futures Toolkit by the Nordcap Consulting Group. And they lay out a bunch of great exercises and guidelines to help groups and teams of various sizes. So give it a shot. And remember, when you're putting together these workshops, the outcomes are going to be a lot more effective if you include a bunch of different perspectives in on the sessions. So mix it up. And as I've already mentioned, unique spaces sometimes come with a large departure in users' expected modes of interaction. And let's face it, change is really hard. Human brains are actually super lazy. We're very smart, but kind of lazy, and are hardwired to follow patterns of use that require the smallest amount of cognitive thought humanly possible. As such, it can be really hard to break those patterns and shift people to a new way of thinking, reacting, or behaving. As designers, there are several ways we can facilitate this with as little burden on our users as possible. First, we can employ visuals that show users how to interact with something or provide them guided interactive tutorials and goals. Science has shown that people learn a lot faster through doing than just listening or being told how to do something. Also, use your deep understanding of users to think about who they want to learn from or who would influence them to try something. Use these people to advertise, normalize, and incentivize actions. And finally, as often as possible, try to fight, huge releases or major departures as much as possible. So try to break your releases down into small chunks and just remember you still have to document everything. Unique spaces sometimes come with with this large departure, and to help deal with this, it helps to kind of also follow the COM-B model for behavior change. This is a structure that helps you identify the things you need to have in place for that successful behavior change to occur. So, do users have the capability, both physically or psychologically, to be able to move to that new behavior? Do they have the opportunity? Does society allow them to do something? Does their environment allow them to do something? And finally, motivation. I got to this with, Who do you want to kind of influence the behaviors? But it also deals with the intrinsic motivations inside all of us. Those need to be in place in addition to kind of lining up societal pressures to help push people in that direction. So if you're ever trying to make a big change for users, just, stop and think, are they ready for it? And while I know this is a lot to take in, take comfort in the fact that successful user change is possible. I get a lot of inspiration from how Apple taught us to use the smartphone. Touchscreens have actually been around since the early 70s and were in regular use in the 90s, but click, pinch to zoom, all of those interactions felt really weird. And users struggled to understand the limitations and errors. Apple figured out why. They looked at how we interact with the world around us and discovered that we navigate it easily due to the physical attributes of objects. And that's just what these 2D graphics were missing. They appealed to our subconscious biases for interaction by then giving each of the objects in the OS a distinct size, weight, and space in an imaginary world, and imbued their physical properties like drag, speed, and bounce. This is all great, but in my opinion, it's how they shared these updates with the world that is the real innovation. Go back and watch their early ads. We couldn't do video here today, but strongly recommend going and checking a look at this later. They're amazing because Apple focused on a story and absorbed you in the potential of the phone. And you didn't even really notice all the interactions that a user was taking with it. But they weren't just showing you all the cool features, they were teaching people how to use the gestures in the most engaging way possible.
In these unique spaces, you tend to work closely with a lot of technical people, especially the ones who've never worked with a designer before or are skeptical of the effectiveness in design methodologies. The first PSA, fake it till you make it, is not going to work. It is the quickest way to lose the respect of a technical team. No one expects you to know the tech really well, so own up to it and make sure you don't filter questions just because you think they're stupid. While it is important that you don't interject and take meetings off course, the longer you live in confusion, the longer it will take for you to become a valuable member of the team. And who knows, you might be helping someone understand things better too. Oftentimes, we use complicated, cooked-up terms and corporate jargon when we speak about our products. Make sure you identify these and define them. And as much as you can, keep reusing the words other team members use so you can go beyond trying to understand each other and getting onto the same page much faster. I love this thing explainer diagram by Randall Munro. It just shows that even a rocket can be described in the most simple and easily defined terms. Here's an example of how Jules documents her terminology and definitions in her Figma files. It's on you to grow the team's design literacy. You cannot expect a technical team member to know how to give you feedback and critique design work. Sprinkle moments of learning throughout your interaction with the technical team. For example, you can start a presentation with good and bad examples that are not related to you, your product, or your company. Use design lingo to explain why they're good or bad. And slowly you'll see the team pick up on the terminology and understand your way of thinking when it comes to the designs you've created. Why stop there? If possible, make things your team can play with. You can do this in a tool like Figma or with tactile prototypes like this one the accessibility team created to help a visually impaired coworker get in on the action. The more they're involved in the creation process, the less time you have to spend on getting buy-in and the more ownership they're likely to take when things get done. When you sense a conversation being derailed, like, I think this is better, I think we should do this, table that conversation. Do your research and back up your points with existing usability research, user feedback, prior experience, and reports from known organizations. You could even ask other design teams for data. This helps the team not design for themselves, but the user, and in the process, increases your credibility too. We were surprised to find out that devs actually want you to push back. Here, it's a business requirement that the front-end developer is talking about, but it could also be designed based on exactly how the team has told you to do it. They want you to push and they want you to innovate. That's what you were hired to do.
Okay, great. So turn on my camera here. So with all that, hopefully you feel a little bit more empowered in your work, but let's face it, there's a lot of it to do. How do you keep from burning out? Well, first, save yourself as much time and energy as possible by knowing when to be done. At IBM, we use hills to help scope our work and reduce feature bloat. It also helps if you can learn from your work over time. This reduces the tendency to repeat past failures, and also by recording things like KPI, metrics, analytics, you can actually start to show the value of design to your team. Also, don't kill yourself by trying to do things the right way. Design is all about compromise. That also means in the way you work. This also gets a lot easier, well, at least for me, when I stopped to think about the fact that the design and research processes are actually almost identical. We basically just use different terms and words for it. So use this to keep an open mind, and, in the meantime, ditch some of the formal stuff that gets in the way of your communication with your team and your speed. Stuff like presentations or redlining. And trust that while other people may know more about the technology than you do, probably because they have a double PhD in something, you are trained to be the user's advocate. And as a result, you probably know a lot more about them as a result. That understanding is your superpower, along with your ability to challenge the team and keep them moving in the right direction, that is. And then, just like you took time out in the beginning, make sure to regularly stop throughout your busy schedule and take time to learn. Identify your knowledge gaps, keep them in a list somewhere, and then come back to them. You can also try your hand at teaching others, maybe young people, some basic concepts to help practice your learning. And then set up time to bring in subject matter experts into your team to have specific learning days or learning classes on particular topics. And every day, you're going to be learning a little bit more, even as, each day can feel like you're actually just learning more about what you don't know. Trust me, you are getting smarter. So cut yourself some slack. And most important of all, be honest with yourself and check in from time to time. These challenging, unique spaces are not for everyone. And if this just isn't what drives you, don't sweat it and find something else that does. Because to keep your sanity and creativity up as a designer, the most important thing is that you should be having fun. It's what fosters the most creativity. And okay, hey, for all the people on this call that I'm sure have already mastered all of these things, one, congratulations, fantastic. And, you're ready to start pushing outside your comfort zone. Try doing things like coming up with patents, facilitating workshops, speaking at conferences, or trying your hand at learning the business side of things. I've learned a lot by shadowing some of my execs in important meetings. And then just remember, all of these additional things are going to enrich and empower you in the unique spaces you find yourself in.
Oh, thank you. And that's it. I know that was a lot. So we created a cheat sheet, print it, refer to it, keep it as a reminder. I know it's been helping me with my new job, especially during this work from home situation. The link is already up in this video description. And for those interested in reading up, here are our sources. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all the people who took out the time to speak to us. We are really, really, really grateful. And thank you for listening to us. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Actionable tips. I think that everyone's going to have to watch that again about 2 or 3 more times because there's so much in there. Well done. That was awesome. So we've got tons of questions from everyone. Let me see. We've got a question from Aubrey. Hello, Aubrey. Aubrey's question is, how did your strategies change whilst working remotely? Aubrey's in Austin.
Mrinali, you want to take that one or you want me to?
I can take that one. So I started working during the lockdown and I still haven't met anybody I work with. So to say that, it was even more important for me to meet not just stakeholders, but all kinds of team members and ask them about their fears, their motivations, what I should be looking out for. And I'd like to say that when you get into a new team, of course, look out for your allies and your teachers, but also look out for the people who you think are thriving in the space. Your strategies doesn't have to be exactly what we, have outlined here, but they could be based on your conversations with these people who have thrived. So that's been helping me a lot. And I always ask them whenever I start a new job, and it has been for this one too, I ask them, like, what advice would you give me? And the tips from there have really helped me thrive.
Okay, awesome. Question for Julianna. What have been some of your biggest successes on your team?
I'd say some big successes might not even, make that much of a difference to anybody that wasn't paying super close attention. But and I think I see another question in the chat that this might.
Okay, I think that
Answer to get answers. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Are you okay, Julianna? Yeah.
Okay, great. And so we were sent to the Design This forum. We're going through, we're breaking it apart, blah, blah, blah. And we start noticing that no one is answering any of the questions from our team. No one's going in and responding, answering. And, we were asked by our team to do this. And so one of my biggest successes was just realizing that and going back to the team and saying, like, hey, what's going on, guys? Why aren't we, why is no one answering this? And one of our execs was like, oh, I told our team to stop answering questions there. So it helped pivot our whole kind of support strategy to focusing on social media, Stack Exchange, Slack, etc., which was really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Mrinali, what part of designing for emerging tech do you like the most?
I think I have a tendency to go dive in the deep end without knowing how to swim. I do that really often. And the way our team works at Amazon, we work on different projects, and it could be from like a 3 to 6 month period. So we work a lot with emerging technologies, and I like to just go in without knowing anything and then questioning everything we're doing in a nice way. And I think that brings up a lot of questions because I like to go in with a fresh perspective, have those questions out, and then with the team begin to answer them. And I think it's not necessarily related to the technology, but I think I learn so much every time, and I come in with a skeptical mind and leave with like a very open mind to the emerging technology. So I like the personal growth as well as always having like a fresh perspective to a new technology.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We've got a question from Srayan. Their question is how to advocate the value of user research to stakeholders when it becomes difficult to convince them.
This is a
Do you
great
want to take that,
question.
Jules?
Yeah, I got this one. We've actually been dealing with this recently on our team. And probably some of my user researchers are even listening in on this. So hey guys. But what we have kind of tried to do is stop to kind of explain the value to people, but try to bring in those stakeholders who are skeptical into the design research setup process, have them come in as note takers, and then on the other side, once all the research has been conducted, our user researchers have been great about getting everyone together to do synthesis. And so this keeps stakeholders from thinking like, oh, these designers, they're just like hearing what they want to hear from something. So I don't know, that's helped our team out a lot really recently.
Okay, good. Question from Mallory. Your suggestions are from the first person, but I'm wondering, how can I be a better teammate and help new designers have a better onboarding experience and contribute faster?
Mrinali, can I take this one a little bit?
Yes, you can.
Cool. So one thing that I've tried to do with our kind of growing team is it takes a while when you're new to a team to even learn who the people are, who those stakeholders are. So when I have new people coming on, I have this kind of like checklist of people to go and talk to about particular things. And I prime those individuals ahead of time with, hey, can you take new person through blank? Make sure to be super easy on them and have some kind of key questions already written out so that they can get that conversation started. I also kind of, if I've got enough time, sit in on those sessions with them and help prompt questions that either party might not be thinking to ask. So anyway, and I identify those teachers as well. So I try to get people who are, I don't know, communicative and helpful. I don't know.
I think it's particularly, yeah, it's particularly important for you to connect new people to existing people because the product and the knowledge changes so fast that you can't keep sitting and documenting like an onboarding manual for like to say. So you'd rather connect them to the people who are actually doing the job so that they can like have more relevant conversations.
Okay. And a question here, does IBM or Amazon have any kind of documentation aimed at digital designers?
Well, IBM has a whole design thinking course and toolkits that's available online for free. Especially during the lockdown, I think they freed up a lot of the courses, right, Jules?
Yeah, they've got a lot of great stuff, particularly around like AI ethics. So we have a whole team that's focused on AI ethics on our team, and one designer who helped us out is even, you know, kind of taken that work and helped out with like the IEEE board to help set out guidelines for ethics in AI. So yeah, there's some good ones out there.
Okay, awesome. Question from Tommy. How do you ensure your ability to gather user data and do user research when your delivery timeline does not accommodate time for these processes?
Do you want me to take that one?
If you want.
Okay. So I think from the very beginning, and I remember one of the design principals telling me this, that if you're going to look at your teammates as just teammates, you're not going to build trust. But if you start looking at them as people, like ask them like, hey, you didn't come in yesterday. What happened? How's your family? How do you talk? So I feel like relationship building is key and user testing is going to take time. You are going to have to create multiple iterations. But once the trust is built, you can start buying more time to say, hey, I know we don't have time, but I have these 3 people. I've already gathered them. They're like friends of friends. Can you help me with this user research so we can get things out the door really quick? And that way, then you're bringing them onto the other side and saying, we're great friends. We're allies. Let's do this together for the betterment of the product. Like we're on the same team. It doesn't always work. And it is hard, and that we're not denying that. But I think building relationships with your teammates on either side and making them understand that you're part of the same team on the same side, trying to build a better product is really, really important.
Okay, good advice there. You've got another question from Michael, who's a digital designer in Charlotte. Which design software apps are best suited for emerging tech?
Well, I have a love affair with Figma. Like far and away
If you didn't
the best.
get that already.
I love it so much. It's insane. That and Mural are like my bread and butter. And it's great because you can actually like collaborate in real time, and it has some great prototyping tools already built in as a part of it. So you don't have to like switch between like Sketch and InVision and that kind of thing. So it's super awesome.
And the cool thing is that you can drop in on like Figma files, unlike Sketch, which doesn't allow for real-time collaboration. But sometimes those apps and softwares are picked for you. Sorry, it's early in the morning and someone is like cleaning the outside. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry. But yeah, so sometimes those things are picked for you. And when I entered my team 6 months ago, I was taking up Sketch files that people had already built. So like then transferring to Figma is difficult. So see what your team is already working with. Sometimes those are the best things to go ahead with.
Okay, thank you. Mrinali, what would be the one strategy that you would suggest someone working in these unique spaces should adopt?
Counterintuitive to say, like, drop everything we just said. I don't want to say that. You don't have to drop everything we just said, but it would be best to observe people who are thriving, talk to them, and then tailor make your strategies or pick the strategies from here to see which ones can best help you. So I think the best strategy to have in life is to go out and have honest conversations with people you know are thriving in the space that you're working in.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Julianna? You look like you were gonna. Oh, okay.
You got it.
Okay. Question from Excellence. What objects or activities outside of design have helped you revolutionize your understanding and design process?
That's a really big question. Well, we already mentioned, like, I love sci-fi, watching it, reading it, learning about it. Like, even though a lot of it is fiction, it can be really helpful to get your creative juices flowing. And then also one of the probably most impactful things I did was there was a group at the University of Texas of undergrad students that were trying to get a quantum computing curriculum kicked off. And so we actually just started attending their like afternoon sessions and like auditing the like proto class and learning with a bunch of other people kind of roughly at the same level helped me like nothing else. So I don't know, I guess inserting yourself in the world of the people you're designing for has changed the game for me.
Okay. So let's have a look. More questions. Aubrey, another question from Aubrey O'Neill. I would love to hear an anecdote in which you were new to the team technology domain, but found a way to tactfully suggest a better experience.
Should I go take that?
Yeah, if you want to.
I think the fact that you're new to the team gives you license to say things more easily and be forgiven for it. So, because I was new to the team, I could say things more, I could shoot off my mouth more and then be apologetic about it later. And I can't tell you the projects I'm working on. The other thing to focus is, hey, if I look from the perspective of the user, would anyone want to do that? Would anyone want to like make it into a question instead of shooting your mouth off, which I do personally a lot. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes stepping back and saying it as a question then sparks discussion you know, instead of people trying to defend what they did. So, or like, tell me something, tell me what you were thinking, or tell me what you guys were thinking when y'all made the decision to X. Or do you think the user would want to go through something like this? Or how would it feel from a third person if a user was doing X? So, things like that.
Yeah,
and,
that's it.
And on our team, so one thing too that a lot of the times, like some of like the higher ups, they really want to push like the Uber technology side or like the main user experiences, but a lot of times that can mean churn. So instead of just kind of like sitting idle, a great opportunity for making an impact is to find places where you, even with your limited knowledge, can make an impact. Like for us on Quantum, we had user feedback for a while that our documentation was all over the place. And so I took some downtime in our natural cycle and said, like, hey guys, why don't we actually do something about this? And fought to get all the documentation brought together, helped to actually spun up a content team that we'd never have. And it ended up being kind of a big success. So I don't know, it's just finding ways to reach outside of what you've been explicitly asked to do. So just, I don't know, not waiting for somebody to tell you what to do and trying it out on your own. Even if you fail, I don't know. That was a super fun exercise.
Okay. A question, what was the hardest part about learning quantum computing?
Linear algebra, 100%. Still don't know it. Still trying to. Algebra, it should be easy, right? But it's been pretty hard. But I facilitated the creation of like our first linear algebra 101 course with the fantastic Paul Cassabaum, who's another one of our allies. And we're hoping to continue that at like a designer level session. So yeah, that's been the hardest.
Okay. And another question from Tommy. Oftentimes, extremely new products lack the data necessary to back up your design decisions. Do you have an alternate solution?
I would break up the design itself into different elements of the design. So your product might be new, but the smaller task that you're trying to achieve may not be. Like a smaller flow may not be. And so if you break it up and say someone is trying to fill a form or drag and drop things or try and install something or configure something, then you can start to look outside the space, and like places like Nielsen and Norman and Baymard Institute, they do a good job of then saying, if a user is trying to do X, these are the things to keep in mind. And so especially when you don't have user data or don't have the time to do user research, break down a complex product into smaller, simpler elements, and then look up what things you need to keep in mind while designing for users that are trying to achieve an X task.
Yeah. And also too, just fight to release things. Sometimes you're not going to have the feedback you need or the data you need until after something's already out there. So make sure that your team tries to prioritize like analytics and metrics solutions so that you can put something out, but learn about it. And if it doesn't work, I mean, maybe you're wrong, at least you know why and you know when and how to change something. Try to fight for retroactive learning as well.
Okay, thank you. More questions. What kind of additional training does a UX designer need to work in companies like IBM or Amazon?
Nothing. I mean, I think as long as you can talk through your process and your thinking and you have a really good portfolio, people will know you'll be able to grasp the tech and the industry, like figure out how to work your way through it. So I'm not trained in anything special. The last thing I did was my master's, but I think definitely, as usual, the same things are like have a good portfolio, make sure you talk through your process and your thinking. And so if you think out loud during these design challenges of interviews and things, people start to understand how you tackle problems. And once they understand that, they can figure out whether you'd be a good fit for the space.
Yeah. And one of the most important stretch goals that I think we had on the list, but I'm not sure, is like, if you can, try to learn code. It's something that like I've been meaning to do for a long time. And this can be not only the code that's used to build your experiences, product, et cetera, but also like what languages are your users working with? Largely in emerging tech, your users are actually doing a lot of coding. So try to understand that as much as possible would be it. And also it helps you understand your team more as well as your users.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, questions. What can I do to help get a job in emerging technology?
You want to take that, Jules?
I mean, yeah. So show you're interested. Try a random small project in an emerging tech space. Write a blog about it. Try to learn code. Build up your resume in that. Also go into interviews clearly having tried to learn as much as possible about whatever the domain is. And then particularly, companies really care when you care about their tech. So one of the like best interviews I ever, helped conduct was somebody actually came to me with like a list of ways that they would like improve our experience. And I was like, bravo, fantastic. This is great. What can I hire you tomorrow? So anyway, be engaged.
I think with these bigger companies, it's also nicer to sometimes meet the people that work in the space. So, events, Facebook groups, just different like digital and physical platforms in which you can get exposed to the thinking of people in the space, and then start networking with people who are hiring or who are in the space and can connect you to others.
Okay, great. Good tips there. So I think that's pretty much all the questions. We've got one last question. Someone saying, can you share with us your presentation?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. So we can add that in the description of the video soon. Wow. So thank you so much. That was awesome. That's all for today. There's been a lot of knowledge, so that was very interesting. Thanks to everyone for joining on the live stream. If you enjoyed this, you should join us on Thursday. We're going to be doing a live jury website review with Jonas Emmertson and Anna Luna, and it will be presented by Jonas Lemper. So tune in, that's next Thursday at 5 p.m. Central European time. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. Remember to like and subscribe. And massive thanks to Julianna and Mrinali.
And thank you so much, Rachel, and to all the Allwards team. It's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, we're really super grateful to be here.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So, brilliant content and lovely to meet you guys. And hopefully we'll see you again soon on Awards Academy.
All right.
Bye.